Hello. Today I will be once more featuring the Dmitri Donskoi, the tier 9 cruiser in the Soviet line. Someone is joking that he's going to go up the 11 line to D, and I say it sounds like your average battleship player. On this map, of course, it's fairly common. You see the little island on around E9. It's fairly common that battleships tend to sail around that island on the outside instead of actually pushing into sea to support them. So usually on this map, especially when playing cruiser, paying attention to where your friendly battleships are going is extremely important. Because, well, you rely quite heavily on them to give you some sort of support. Otherwise, you are going to get wrecked if you're all alone. And now, not unexpectedly, I got put into T10 matchmaking, which is once again, of course, something you gotta get used to if you're playing a tier 9 ship. You're gonna have a lot of tier 10 games. Some ships deal with it better than others. The Donskoi, however, does fairly well against T10s, mostly because, well, if you use the build that I recommend, you can watch my previous commentary where I go over my recommended build for the ship. Having that increased range makes it so much easier to actually survive and deal damage, consistent damage against tier 10s. T10 battleships aren't that scary when you're able to fight them from 15 to 20 km away instead of having to fight them in close range. A carrier, a gearing, a Z52, the usual culprits. Well, the Z52 is a bit of a new culprit, you might say, but other than that, pretty much what you'd expect to see. Carriers is something I'm playing on my NA account here, hence the over 100 millisecond ping, but carriers is actually something that I've been seeing a lot more on NA than EU. It feels like on EU it's very rare to actually bump into carriers, whereas on NA I feel like almost every single game you have a carrier here. I shot my first volley still undetected, surprisingly. I'm expected to get detected soon. You can stealth fire if you got a 15-point captain, which I finally do have on this ship. If you do have a 15-point captain and you have the increased range, you are able to stealth fire. But it's at very extreme ranges and it's of questionable value. I mean, it's nice to have at times, especially when you're very, very low HP and you're harassing a high tier battleship. But most of the time, it's of questionable value. Now, prioritizing, of course, well, at this point, really the only ship I can really see, which is the Friedrich Grosse. Using HE, of course, to set fires. I want to burn him down ASAP. This ship with 12 guns is an excellent fire starter. And also, I want to push in and help in case there's someone challenging this cap. I can, of course, support them with radar. And it appears the Des Moines is he might be in division with the Kaban de Gearing since he's being smoked up by them. And they are using some team play to get into this cap. I'm using the smoke to hide behind and be somewhat undetected, but with all the planes in the air, if I'm not in the smoke itself, it's quite risky. I don't feel like going into the smoke myself because, unlike the Des Moines, which can sit angled in the smoke and be highly effective, Donskoi has to give broadside because just angling and showing the front against your opponent means you lose out on half your firepower. And most of the time you want to be using full broadside to be able to deal that damage. This Des Moines is giving full broadside, so I switch from HE to AP. You can Citadel Des Moines with the ship easily from like 18 km away as well. You can Citadel pretty much any T10 cruiser from this far away with some ease, in fact. The only exception is probably the Zao, because the Zao has the biggest troll armor out of all the T10 cruisers. Shells that look like they should hit aren't hitting or aren't being Citadels, they just bounce or overpen or whatever. The Zao has exceptionally good armor compared to all the other T10 cruisers, which is of course something it doesn't really strictly need since it's already so strong. But whatever, the Des Moines popped up, still showing broadside, so I of course punished him with Citadels. He continues to show a surprising amount of broadside. I think he's underestimating me or he's tunnel visioning on the Bismarck. Regardless, I punish him with a double Citadel. I do, however, get shot in the side from both the Atago and the Donskoi, which leaves me in a pretty awkward position right now because I need to angle against their spawn, but I'm also showing broadside to this position. As I said in my Des Moines commentary, if you're in a position where you're unable to angle against your opponent, you are forced to give broadside at any point, then that position is a bad one. So this is pretty much a prime example of a bad position. Trying to use my torps to estimate the speed of the ship. Atago is showing a fair amount of broadside, turning hard to the right to not avoid being citadeled, and someone sneakily has apparently teleported an island in front of me. Well, in all seriousness, if this happens, it happens to me as well. Sometimes you ground, you underestimate your turning circle or something similar, you don't pay attention, whatever, you ground. First thing you need to do is look at the minimap and see if there are any threats that could shoot you, or can you stay undetected. I assume that I cannot stay undetected because of all the planes, so I decided to shoot. I am, however, angled against everything. If I was showing broadside, full broadside to any of these ships, I wouldn't have taken the risk of firing. But because I am angled against everything, I did take the risk because I am fairly confident I would survive it. And of course the Atago was giving me so much broadside that I was willing to take the risk of eating some damage in return for the damage I dealt. I did end up only getting 2 or 3 citadels on him, but it had the potential of being much better than that. Ultimately though, it's not the end of the world. This island is a nice cover. Now that I stopped firing, I'm able to easily sneak away. I'm gonna see if I can get a good AP volley on any of these ships, but it looks like they're all angling away from me. Of course, most of the damage I've taken so far has been HE based, which means that of course I'm able to heal up a significant amount without any issues. Switching to HE at this point, of course, since I'm too far away and they're too angled for me to be useful with AP. Of course, one of the strengths, as mentioned before, is the great range and the great shell arcs and shell velocity. These guys are very out of position, and that means I am able to shoot at them without having to in any way expose myself to their teammates in their spawn. So even though I myself am somewhat out of position, I'm able to deal. We have the capture advantage right now, so it doesn't really matter too much if I'm a bit out of position. If the position was in trouble, then that would be one thing, but we have both our Des Moines and our double DDs defending that cap. So I am fairly confident that if nothing else, they should be able to significantly slow them down. And dealing with this flank is pretty important as well, because this flank is able to shoot my entire team in the side as well. So I'm flanking the flankers in this case. It looks like the Friedrich de Grosse is disengaging because he does not like the fire damage that I'm pumping out. Donskoi, I honestly still want to go for the Friedrich de Grosse because a fire would be pretty juicy on him right now. I think his damage cond. 8 minutes into the game, I've dealt, what, 87,000 damage? Not that much, but then again, I've also lost half my health. But the thing with the Donskoi is that health isn't as important on this cruiser as many others. What your health means is how aggressive you can play. The more health you have, the more aggressive you can play. The less health you have, the more defensive you have to play. And in this case, of course, since I know that most of the damage I've eaten has been HE, backing away and healing up is a perfectly valid tactic. You see how much I'm able to heal back with this, using this healing consumable. So by the time my last heal comes up, I'll be back way over half HP again. Now it looks like they're collapsing a bit. That's of course the danger with those sort of smoke setups, is that if they collapse, they kind of tends to have a domino-like effect where the entire defensive thing crashes instantly. But the Atago is pushing back in, so I switch to AP. Let's see. Oh, I aimed at the waterline, but you see he's actually turning slightly in towards me, which means, yeah, it lands too high. So he's still though tunnel visioning. He's aiming for the Khabarovsk, I think he wants to finish him. So this time I aim slightly below the waterline, since I know he's coming slightly towards me. And this time I land exactly where I want to, which is the middle of the ship, right at the waterline, which is where his citadel is. So he got absolutely crippled. At this point it doesn't even matter if I citadel him, but by habit I still try to aim for that same spot. He does get absolutely deleted though, and I switch to HE since the Tirpitz is full HP. If a battleship is low HP, then using AP in situations like this might be very strong, because not only can he heal up less of the damage, but you also tend to deal more damage per volley. But is he going to... I mean, he's still giving broadside, which means my AP is going to deal a lot of damage, and I do have... There are DDs around and there's a carrier involved as well, but if he starts angling like this, Yeah, he wants to mitigate the AP damage. I should honestly switch to HE at this point, especially since I'm launching Torps. But I think he really wants to go for this Missouri. He wants to angle for the Missouri and angle for him. And me being on this flank is extremely frustrating for him because he cannot angle towards me. And as long as he's incapable of angling towards me, I will happily exploit the broadside. Note that I'm keeping the one island between the Donskoi and me, and one island between me and Friedrich der Grosse. I'm barely moving. That's because I'm keeping track of where his guns are pointed. As long as the guns aren't pointed at me, I can basically park here. Yes, I'm spotted, but Friedrich der Grosse can't shoot at me. Donskoi can't shoot at me. Well, he can, but I'm extremely angled. So there's no need for me to speed up from this position. I can happily just basically park here. And now he's finally decided that he's taken enough of AP damage beating from me that he's gonna angle away. My torps aren't hitting either, so I switch to HE. Of course, against this kind of angle, it's pointless to even attempt to land any sort of battleship or any sort of AP shells. Friedrich der Grosse appears to be pushing in, so I'm gonna once again make sure I'm keeping this island between me and the opponents. His guns are still pointed away, so I'm not really in a hurry to leave from behind this island. And I'm not afraid to commit to this full turn. Turning like this, if there's a battleship who can see you, is of course extremely risky. But I know where his guns are pointed, and they're not pointed at me. And I want to finish off the gearing that helped them cap it, so I pop a quick radar to see if I could snipe him as I turn around, since getting rid of him will help things a lot. So a quick radar snipe on their gearing, and now the Tirpitz has finally decided he's had enough of my bullshit, and he's gonna point his guns at me, so I start angling away, and I start once again kiting. Just like I did earlier in the game, it's time for kiting and going and just sailing away. Something the ship is extremely good at. The Donskoi starts chasing me, but honestly, good luck hunting down this Donskoi. With speed flag, you do 37.7 knots in this ship, and I think in the gearing, as an example, I think you can do 37.9 with a speed flag. So that's how fast this ship is. It's just as fast as a US tier 10 DD. So you're not gonna have an easy time chasing it. The carrier attempts to drop me, so I pop defensive AA, and I just keep kiting away. I have one fire on me. It's not enough to justify using my repair, as I still have one here left. Now it's gone up to 2 fires, so it looks like it's time to pop my repair consumable at this point, because I'm taking more damage than I can realistically heal from using my consumable. Trying to finish off the Tirpitz, since he cannot no longer repair, but it looks like he's just barely gonna get away. Donskoi is still harassing me, but now I pop my heal, and you can see that's of course the weakness of fire damage. It's considered light damage, so you can heal it all back. And I keep angling, I keep kiting away, and in situations like these I actually have the advantage over the Donskoi, even though he has more HP. But the fact is, he's the one chasing me, and it's significantly easier to land shells on a guy chasing you than the other way around, because the shells have a shorter way to travel, because, well, he's sailing towards the shells, of course. He's already got 2 fires on him. I wish I had AP loaded here, but at this point he just gives up on the chase, because he realizes he's taking too much damage, and he can't really hunt me down. He just has to disengage. As soon as he does this, I know it's safe to turn, so I make sure I'm showing broadside to these bombers, so that they can't drop me down the length of my ship, but instead they have to drop me across the ship, which means his bombs of course miss. Even though I didn't have defensive AA available to spread out the bombs, simply turning like that made his bombs miss. If he tried to maneuver for a better drop, well, my AA would have shot them down. So the game ended 181,000 damage, which, considering I grounded and potatoed in this game, I consider quite nice. I managed to beat that division with the Kaba gearing Des Moines. I managed to beat them in XP, and it was a pretty nice daily win for me. Overall detailed report, fires 42k, and notably I tanked 61k damage, considering the ship itself has like what, 43k HP. That's always pretty satisfying. Anyway, that was my Donskoi commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.